Hello, and welcome to the Mime Radio Show. I'm Karen Hoyer.
And I'm James Donlin. And behind the curtain in the tech basement is Michael Diaz. You won't see his face, but this guy controls our lives. He's the man with the levers, with the buttons, with the gadgets. And we're so happy to have him here. He's like our heartbeat. Today, we have Nola Ray as our guest, and I'm really excited to talk to Nola. She's a force of nature from England by way of Australia originally, and she's had an amazing career. Let me read something about her before we welcome her in. Nola Ray was born in Sydney. She migrated with her family to London in 1963 and trained at the Royal Ballet School. She danced professionally in Sweden before studying mime with Marcel Marceau in Paris. She co-founded French-based international research troupe KISS and Friends Roadshow with Django Edwards, and was a member of the Bristol Old Vic Company. In 1974, she founded her company, London Mime Theatre, with Matthew Ridout, and has since toured his work to 68 countries worldwide. In 1977, she sparked, in her bio, she also says instigated, which is an interesting word in this case, the London International Mime Festival, which will celebrate its 45th edition in January 2022. Nola's early solo sketch shows mix mime, dance, clowning, puppetry, and controlled lunacy. In 1990, she radically changed her style and began presenting full-length solo comic dramas. She is in demand as a director, acclaimed for turning classic tragedies into clown theater. Broaden Your Mime and The Clown Speaks Without Words are Nola's workshops dedicated to letting the body do the talking. She has been the subject of 2 television documentaries and has received a Total Theater Lifetime Achievement Award and the Charlie Rivel Award for Clowning. In 2008, Nola was awarded an MBE. And for those who don't know what that is, living here in the wilds of the United States, the MBE is the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, an honor bestowed by the Queen of England for Nola's services to drama and to mime. So let's welcome Nola Ray. I hear, there she is.
It's so good to have you, Nola. I have heard your name so many times over the years and have never had the fortune to see you live, although there's many videos that I've peeked at, but I am so glad you decided to honor us with your presence.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for honoring me with your presence.
Yeah, I likewise am very excited, as I said. I was talking to Nola before the show that often mimes, particularly physical theater artists in different parts of the world, never are introduced to each other. Back in the golden days, maybe the 70s and 80s, we had lots of festivals. And of course, Nola's still, the London Mime Festival is still happening. But that was a great place to network and to meet people. And we find these pockets of, these legends, these words come out of the mist, and we hear about them, but unfortunately we don't get to see them. So hopefully with the Mime Radio Show, one of our goals was to make it possible for people to be introduced to the great performers and teachers in physical theater of the last 50 years or so.
So Nola, I'm always very curious about what artists think right before they start performing. Do you have a little mantra, or do you have a particular routine that you do to prepare? What goes through your mind?
Yes, I repeat words to myself. Excuse me, I'm going to I don't cough. Sometimes I do. And it's called, mostly it's concentrate.
Concentrate.
Concentrate. Energy, stamina.
Is that a nervous time for you, or is it like a collecting your powers, so to speak?
You have to collect yourself together, because you don't want your mind flying all over the place. So if you say these mantras like concentrate, that's very important to me.
Yeah.
Concentrate, relax sometimes. No, not often do I say relax, but stamina. These are all things I wish to have for the show. Stamina, inspiration, accuracy, another thing.
Did you, I know you're such a power on stage. Is that is there any nervousness or insecurities? Like some people say, "Oh, I'm always nervous." That's if I'm not, it's a bad thing. Like myself, I was always excited to get on stage. How do you feel about that?
I'm nervous. I think, if I'm not nervous, I'm not over nervous usually. When I was younger, I was really nervous, but
Mm.
as I got more experience, I was a little nervous. Uh,
Yeah.
if you're not nervous before you go on, you don't do a good show. You have to
Mm-hmm.
have some nerve.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you a frisson uh, when you actually get onto the stage.
Yeah.
In the day before you have, say you have a performance in the evening, do you have a particular routine about, do you run through the show? Do you rehearse? Do you have a special meal?
I have my big meal. My big meal is a strong lunch, as my Italian friend said. Nola has to have a strong lunch, so I have a big lunch. Usually around 12:30, 1 o'clock, if
Yeah.
I'm in the evening. In Italy, they work so late you can have it a bit later. Then I go
Yeah.
to sleep.
Yeah,
I have,
that's
yeah.
so I enjoy I have always enjoyed performing with an empty stomach. And then of course, especially in other parts of the world, there's the tradition of the artists eating after the show,
I
with
don't
friends and other people. Is that something you always would you
know.
go out and have meals or a drink or anything, or
We have a drink,
go
yeah.
back to your,
We drink a
what's
lot.
that?
We drink more than eat.
Yeah. Oh, I've
As-
heard that.
yeah, just a
What
snack.
what so you enter the stage, and what that force in front of you, the public, the audience, what do they mean to you? How do you approach that? I mean, of course there's different audiences,
Uh,
but what do you
as-
think about that? Who is that out there?
I can tell whether an audience is going to be good or bad within about 2 seconds of entering, or a bit of me entering. Sometimes only my hand comes on. Uh, by their reaction, I either
Mhm.
say, "Oh, good, we're going to have some fun," or "Oh dear, going to have to work at this. This is going to be a challenge." So you can
Is it,
tell there's an atmosphere in the theatre straight away, and sometimes it's better than others. Sometimes it's a real slog to actually get anywhere with an audience. But generally, they're there to see you. They want to see you, and they're going to be positive. Very
yeah.
few times do you go on stage when the audience is not going to be positive to you.
And
And they
is
say,
there, I'm sorry, is there a way that you, since you're a solo performer, you adjust to draw them in?
uh, yes, if they're good, then you can play.
What's
And
the go
if they're
ahead.
not, then you have to. Don't go any faster. I mean, it's a big mistake to try and get it over with.
Mm,
That's a mistake. Just do your show at the
yeah.
pace you normally should do it. If you do it
That's
too
good
fast, you're
advice.
going to get more deeply mired in difficulties. So just do your work. Do your work. Let your work speak for itself.
Fantastic. What is
That's
the like, for example, if you think it's going to be a slog, what is the cue, or what is the energy you're getting in the hall or the in the theater that tells you that this might be difficult?
it's
Is it
called silence.
silence, or is it
Yeah.
somebody's coughing? What is it?
Well, no, it's usually silence, or generally it's silence. Funny for a
Mhm.
mime, I don't like silence, especially from an audience. Though they
Yeah,
have to
it took me a
concentrate.
long time to understand that sometimes a silent uh, audience watching a mime was the fact they were concentrating. Didn't necessarily mean they were indifferent. I don't know if you ever had those thoughts.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes you think you go, oh God, they're so quiet, but then afterwards they tell you we really enjoyed that and we were
Mm,
concentrating. So it
exactly.
depends. It depends on the audience. Sometimes even on the country you're playing in. Um,
Hmm. What speaking of that, what country would have had maybe the most welcoming audience in your experience? Probably several, but what can you pick one or two out that the public always seemed really involved? Like for me, it's Mexico.
I
Mexican
think
audiences are wonderful.
Mexico's wonderful to play in. Yeah, Mexico's great. I love Mexico. I love South America. And anywhere in
Hmm.
South America is just wonderful to play. In Europe, Norway, funny enough, quite popular in Norway. They tend
Wow.
to like me over there. Italy, France, Spain, countries I really enjoy. I enjoy most countries. I really enjoy Portugal. Yes,
Mm.
all the European countries like that are very appreciative of this kind of work. The times when I had problems was one of the times was Nigeria, where I don't think
Wow.
yeah, Nigeria was they were a bit sort of haughty about why you're doing this kind of stuff for us. Uh,
Wow. Were you worried about guns and rebels coming into the theaters?
this was a while ago. This is before
Yeah, yeah,
Nigeria became a
yeah,
dangerous
yeah.
place.
So,
Interesting.
Nola, I am very, very curious about how you get your inspiration and where your work comes from. So you've done a variety of different things, but what's the process? Do you sit for a while and think, or do you get up on your feet with an idea? Where did
Well,
those wonderful shows come from?
well, when it comes to sketches, they're usually done for there's about sympathy, revenge. Sympathy and revenge are the two reasons to do them
Mm.
with sketches. Generally speaking, with the longer shows and the shows that have well, the full length comedy dramas as we call them, that has to come from an idea, and that idea could come from anywhere. I did my first one of those was called Elizabeth's Last Stand, which is about Queen Elizabeth, the first of England, but not exactly because it's my grandmother trying to be Queen Elizabeth the First of England. So first of all, to get the show to get a feeling for the character of Queen Elizabeth the First, you have to read a lot about her, and a lot you can it's very interesting, and then you pick out what things about her what that you want to show. I was thinking about doing her religious wars, but that became too
Mm.
difficult. I was thinking of doing that in puppetry, where you've got the Catholics, like would be parrots, and the ravens would be the Protestant. But that I threw that out. You throw a lot of ideas out,
Uh-huh.
and eventually she could dance. She was a good dancer. She had a short temper. She was extremely intelligent. She got lonely when she got older because everybody died before her. All her
Mm.
courtiers, people were quite frightened of her.
So is that
Because
where the parallel with your granny came from?
my grandmother was absolutely opposite,
Ah,
and the
So now
person.
I know in your work, especially in the full length pieces, your use of puppetry and so many medias and mediums and wonderful stagecraft, great. I mean, your work is very tight, meaning it's like everything fits. It's very kinetic. One thing affects another. But I know when you say you've used mime and dance and puppetry seems to be something that you use quite a bit in your process. And for
Yeah,
me, puppetry is the mind brain and the puppet operator brain is the same brain,
yeah.
basically.
same. It's the
Um,
same. It's the same technique, puppetry, and it's the same timing, and the same detail in that you move for a puppet. You move slowly, and you articulate. If you move a
mhm.
puppet like this, no one's going to see anything. The other thing about puppetry is you move much slower than you normally would do in real life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's
another.
it. Those beginning puppeteers, they're always, the puppets are like rags on their hands or something,
And that's true with people that are starting out in mime or physical theater. They move too much. They need
Yeah.
to slow
Well,
So
down.
now you
yeah.
don't speak,
I tell you
do
another
you?
thing I have to say about moving and being quick. Marcel Marceau said to us students, "You can be just as boring fast as you can slow."
Great. Wow, that's good.
I like that.
Now, you it seemed that most of your work has been silent. We're talking about process and so forth. I know that the show about with Shakespeare's had some, you've spoken that, but it seems like most of your work has been without words. Is that correct? Would
Yeah,
we say?
I didn't speak in Shakespeare the works. I didn't
I saw
personally.
I saw I saw a video where I saw some, like a word here or there. Maybe
In
there's a gesture to you.
homemade Shakespeare, which is another Shakespeare with
Yeah,
my
yeah. No, I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
yeah.
But
There
talk
I
to
do
us about your
or make sounds, in fact. Yes.
yeah, talk to us about your choice of to not speak, or how powerful silence can be in this process.
Well, I didn't even think about speaking when I first was in theatre, because I was a dancer. I come up from ballet, and ballet dancers don't speak, so I had no reason to think I should speak on stage. The other thing is, if I speak, a lot of roles are what's the word, negated. Because if I come out playing a masculine role and speak with a very feminine voice, it's not going to work.
Mm.
I can play many more characters keeping my mouth shut than I would have been able to do if I'd have spoken.
Mhm.
The moment I speak, I'm female, and generally well, mostly, I play masculine characters, or androgynous anyway. So that's the other reason. And there's another reason: I don't like my voice.
So I think, I'm not sure, but do you work with the director?
Yes.
And how would you recommend young artists or people that are seeing their work come to a certain level and they need to get a director? What's the relationship of the solo performer, the physical theater performer, with their director? How does that work?
Well, a lot of the sketches that I did in the early days, I didn't have a director. They were my sketches, and people who saw them said, "I don't understand that," or "That was good," or "Could you do more of this?" But the later shows did have a director. But what I do to create a show, whether it be a sketch or whether it be a longer piece, is to work out what I'm trying to do. So I make a story, I tell a story, even if I even write it down like a story,
Mm.
and then I try and do it.
Mm-hmm.
If I think it works as a story, it will work generally as a piece of mime or clowning. Sometimes not, but generally it will. So first of all, I study hard. If I'm doing a historical character like Elizabeth I, Mozart, or Napoleon, I study that a lot, and that seems to get into your bones, what you hear about or what you read about these characters, and then you're able to. Well, it's quite difficult. Then you're able to express their characters much more easily. There's a lot of rehearsal goes on. I like to rehearse with props and costumes, even if I haven't got them.
Mm.
I will do, I will do mock costumes and I'll mock up.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they work mocked, then I'll make them properly or get them
Wow.
made properly. That's another thing we do. We also toss out. We say, we want this and we want that and I want this, and then the director comes along and goes, "You don't need that. You don't need this. You don't need that," and right down to its essence, in fact. And this is what mime is. It's the essence, and clowning, the essence of something. You don't need to be too fussy.
So is your director sort of like an editor is to a writer?
My director, the one I work mostly with, is John Mowat, who is a mime. He directs a lot of work, not just mimes. But he is a mime himself. And he's very strange because he never writes anything down. I show him my script and he goes, "Yeah." And he watches.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes he falls asleep, in fact, but he watches. And then he'll get up and he'll do things. He'll just move. And then he'll say, "What you should do is this. Try that." And he'll throw ideas at me. And I said, just try this idea, just do it. And it's improvisation then. It comes up with improvisation. And I say, "No, that doesn't work." He said, "You're right, it doesn't work."
But he's feeling it in his body to put it into your body.
Yes, he's straight. I don't know many Oh, I do. I suppose I must do it myself when I direct, because I direct without, well, there's nobody speaking, so I can't actually say you didn't pronounce this word properly. I have to get up there and say you missed this bit, and I do it for them. But generally, I do what I want them to do.
Now,
Yeah.
you say you've chosen a lot of masculine characters. Now, I happen to think that women have the most power on stage. I think a female performer, or using whatever those sensitivities are or forces are, I think they're very powerful on stage, more so than men. And I think it's very interesting that you, as a woman, that you were prolific in a, very often a kind of stereotypical man's art form, the mime, especially in the last century. It was
Yes,
a
right.
masculine world. And so I'm feeling that because you're a woman and you've chosen characters like Napoleon and, Queen Elizabeth, who probably was all the sexes together, that force of nature.
Mozart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you were empowered. You gave more power to those figures by the nature that you were a woman. I found that fascinating. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's also because it's revenge from my point of view. It's some characters are something you can stick the knife into. So that gives you a motivation to play men.
Yeah.
You couldn't do the same, and maybe you can now, but you couldn't do the same in my day. You didn't have characters you could stick the knife into who were female, but you had to stick the knife in. That
you-
How
first
did you navigate? How did you navigate through that man's world, like in the 80s or 70s, in terms of mime? What was that
Was it
like?
difficult? Did you have a hard time?
no, because you have a hard time because of what you think, or how you feel, and I come from ballet. And the ballet dance, the ballerina, the ballet dancer, the female ballet dancer is the person everybody comes to, which is, in my day at least, not anymore, because now we've got great masculine male dancers, and there's a parity. But in my day, they wanted to see the ballerina, and so there was no way I'm going to feel inferior to any man. So it gave me an attitude about that.
Who? Oh,
Wait, do you hear that?
oh, yes.
Nola, it's time for your gift. You have a package?
Yeah.
The gift music.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you open up your package?
It's the elf in the corner.
I even had myself. They're blunt.
So Nola, this is a package from the Mime Museum. Our curator, Michael Diaz, unfortunately thinks we've got too much stuff, so he's deacquisitioning and sending stuff back to the artists. So it's just a little gift from us. And I think there might be on the top of the box something that tells you what it is.
No, to Nola Ray. Right. From you. It's got a little, can I open the string? Souvenir. A crushed and destroyed mime flower. Left on the stage after an early performance of Nola's Nasty Mime.
Careful. Yeah. There it is.
So is there a mime flower in there? So, completely destroyed, of course.
Did you have any remorse for crushing all those flowers over the years?
Yeah. If anyone hasn't seen this little mime piece of Nola's Nasty Mime, it's like one of my very favorites because it sets us up for this beautiful mime tradition. And
well, you know why I did. I have a reason to. I saw a student of Marceau's, an old student of Marceau, in Berlin on the television. I went, oh. and he had very black frizzy hair, nothing, and a little nappy like thing, and he did all sorts of cliches. He found a flower. He had a child growing up. He, I thought, this is my revenge. Because don't forget,
Yeah, it's wonderful, that piece. You have, there's even some archetypal, there's
on
some
the
kind of
other
archetypal
side,
Marceau movements. And then
fly and the flower are all very cliched. So I thought I'd just get my own back on them. So that's the reason for that. I probably would never have thought of doing it had I not seen that terrible mime on television in Berlin. It wouldn't have occurred to me.
so interesting.
That's how ideas come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you feel there's a little bit of the devil, or the little bit of devilish mischief in you? Because in that piece particularly, you glance at the audience and your eyes are wonderful. There's this, like this this
Well,
spirit that,
what are you laughing at?
yeah.
Mhm. You're
How was
very,
that?
very mischievous.
How was that taken in the day? That kind of irreverent piece. Did you have any
They really
feedback?
no, the audience. Well, I think they generally liked it, except one Dutchman who said some people like flowers and butterflies.
Yeah. Tell us about some influences in your early days, so how you were influenced to take the pathway that you did.
Well, I was a dancer. I was working in Malmo in Sweden at the State Theatre, and Marceau came there. Now, I'd known about 6 months before that he was going to open a school, and I had decided by that time that I would like to do. I didn't want to stay in this company being a ballet dancer anymore. So I wondered what I could do with the technique of ballet, which is so difficult to learn. It's really, really the ultimate technique, and not the voice. And it seemed to be mine. So when he came to my theatre, I was terribly nervous, but I eventually asked him, could I come to your school in September? And he said, oui. He just said yes. Okay. So I worked away to try and went to Denmark to earn some more money in the Tivoli Pantomime Theatre, blah, blah, blah. And eventually I got to Paris. And he said, ah, oui, le petite Suède, the little Swedish girl.
He thought you were Swedish?
Yes, because he saw me. He remembered he saw me in Sweden, so I was for a little while the Swedish girl. But then he did find out I was Australian at that point, or British. And my landlady, she called me always La Petite Canadienne. She thought I was Canadian. So, but he found out. We became, Marceau and I, we were good friends. And whenever he performed in London, we came to see him and we went out with him. And he was a wonderful, wonderful performer and a hugely good teacher. Very sort of humane human teacher. He never.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So he never. You would work and everybody was amatore. Well, they were really amateur. Not very good. Most of us were terrible. We did the most horrible exercises for him, but he would always step up and say, "Now, I like the way you did this, and this was very nice." And there you go. And then he'd do it himself, and we would go.
Yeah.
And that's how he taught us, with great sort of. He didn't lose his temper. He didn't ever go, "I am the great Marceau and you are nothing." Never. He was always very, very fair and very generous. So
now Marceau is known in some quarters as, there's this romantic lyrical quality to him, and then your style, like we've talked about, revenge and irreverent and breaking the mold. Where did this rebellious quality in you come out of that environment, the Marceau environment, which was this other kind of quality that was being presented to you?
I didn't want to be a small version of Marceau.
Mm.
I decided that quite early on. I wanted to make my own style, as it were, and choose material that is from me. Because Marceau, he's had about 100 different ideas. I wish I'd have written them down because I might be trying them. But he had 100 ideas. He liked about 20. So I couldn't do I didn't want to do his ideas, and he'd taken up quite a lot of the best ones, actually. I had to rethink and do ideas that were from my experience. So one of the early pieces was the ballet. That's a revenge piece, in fact. And the conductor is another one. That's another revenge piece.
Yeah.
They're wonderful. Unfortunately, we have to take a little break here because I have to leave. But I know that James has a ton of other questions to answer, so we're going to continue the conversation. Nola, my dream is to come to London and see the London Mime Festival. I would love to see one of your shows in person when it's allowed to travel and so forth. But I am so thrilled to have spent a little bit of time with you. And I will let you continue the interview. So goodbye for me.
Okay, guys, we'll take a little break and we'll be back in probably 5 seconds or a split second. The magic of editing. Okay, here we are. So yeah, like makeup, hair, makeup.
Especially hair.
Yeah. I'm assuming we can just.
All right.
Yeah, I'm feeling lonely now. This is the first time we've had these problems where now it's just you and me. I'm assuming we can just start again. Where were we? We're talking about that mix of
not being under the shadow of Marcel Marceau.
Yeah.
Not being his little shadow.
Did you find your style or your approach pretty quickly once you had made that decision?
Probably I think so. I was using what he taught me anyway, the technique of what he was not the only teacher at his school, by the way. His ex-wife Ella was teaching Tomaszewski type mime, which is very athletic.
I know that style.
Really good technique, and she was the main technique teacher. We had Pierre Very, who was his, in fact, the principal of his school. He taught us.
Did he teach? Did Pierre Very teach her?
Yes, mask work and other things, and we had a dance teacher, acrobatics teacher, and we even had a fencing teacher.
It's a conservatory. Yeah. So this was a big influence on you, this experience. And then are there any childhood experiences that might have influenced you? Like, did you grow up in wide open spaces? Or you were from Sydney.
I grew up in Sydney. I'm a city slicker. But of course, ballet was the big thing in Australia. I went to see all the big companies there. And but our whole family was very fond of the silent comedians, in particular, comedians in general. Mm-hmm. We like to think of ourselves as connoisseurs of that.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
So I had a background, even in Australia, of things that were funny and comedians and silent movies and Charlie Chuck, Buster Keaton, Jacques Tati, even in Australia.
I've always appreciated Australian film because it's very gritty. Usually it's very gritty and very, the flies are on the red meat very often. And, there's a lot of visceral artistic work that comes out of Australia. So I'm thinking some of that kind of quality may have influenced you to take the path you did, to break away from.
I think also that our humor is quite black if you're Australian. A much darker sense of humor than Americans do, or even Marceau. Marceau doesn't have a particularly dark sense of humor.
Yeah, you're right.
We do.
And you never went back. You never made a choice to go back to Australia.
We did several tours, big ones. Australia. We have been back, yes.
But you felt at home in England all these years.
Yes, I like Europe. I like the fact you can go across the water and you've got a new language.
Absolutely.
Culture, things to see,
Do you have any disaster story? I know you've done such amazing amount of touring. Do you have any disaster stories that come to mind that might be interesting and fun to hear about from your sojourns?
Well, trying to get out of Beirut was fun.
Oh,
During the war.
uh-huh.
In Beirut, we went to Beirut. The British Council sent us there and said if they don't survive this, if we won't work with them again. If they do, we might think about it, because it was a
Wow.
very dangerous place to be. We did
Uh-huh.
I must admit, we did a really wonderful show at the American University, which was then after bombed to the ground. And then we tried to get out because we were working in the north side of Cyprus. Well, first of all, there was a terrible rainstorm, and Beirut was flooded. Secondly, the Israelis had strafed some of the Palestinian camps nearby.
Wow.
There was a bus that had been blown up with Israelis in it, and so everybody knew in Beirut that there was going to be revenge.
Wow.
Eventually, we got to the airport, checked our bags in. Everybody was looking up the sky to see when the Israelis were going to strafe. We went to the plane, our plane to Cyprus, and they said, "Where are your bags?" And they weren't there. So Matthew looked around and he saw our bags going off to an Egyptian flight on one of these trolley things, and he ran and he took them. Luckily, we only had two bags. He ran back, threw them into the hold, and we were pushed up the stairs. We weren't even sitting down before the plane took off.
Amazing.
So we then arrived in Nicosia, and then we had to get across to the other side of the Turkish side of Nicosia, because we were playing for the Turkish president of the Nicosia, the Cyprus Turkish
Yeah, yeah.
president.
So you were really at the intersection of politics and war and,
Yes, but
all those things that humanity does to make things difficult.
we also played in Beirut. We played in Beirut. We played in Baghdad during the war there.
What now?
Syria.
Yeah, yeah. So you've done a lot of work in the Middle East and that part of the
Yes.
world, that Eastern
The best
Mediterranean.
place there is Egypt. Egypt is just really wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Which is just
Stuff.
kind of
Yeah.
what's the most unusual country you've performed in? Unusual, not in a negative way, but just the most adventurous and the most delightful, not another place on earth. What's a place like that maybe you've performed?
We performed in Greenland.
Oh, wow.
Quite interesting.
And what about the stage? What is there any kind of interesting, quirky stage or playing space you may have encountered in your travels?
Oh, we had a lot of dumps and dives, yes.
Yeah. I remember performing and touring a one-man show in Ireland, and they encouraged me to drink Guinness during the performance because it was in a pub, and I quite enjoyed that because I like Guinness, and but that I'd never experienced that before, getting a little buzz during the show, but it was all good crack, as you say, So
We went to Dublin once to perform in the Project Theatre, which is behind the Olympia Theatre, where Marceau played in the big theatre. The Project was. Anyway, we parked there and everything. Went to the hotel, which is very nearby, and the director, the producer, came at 9 o'clock and summoned Matthew down to the bar. And he had a couple of Guinnesses there, 9 o'clock in the morning. We normally wouldn't.
Yeah, it's breakfast, right?
Yeah. So we got a few little problems. We got a few problems.
Yeah. So you're comfortable? Are you comfortable in any kind of playing space, or do you have standards? Or
no? But the fact with this particular story, our theatre had caught fire. Project Theatre.
During the performance?
No, before that night. The lighting box had gone up. So don't worry, your stuff's all right. It's a bit wet.
Yeah, the world of, I mean, I've fallen off the stages when the blackout was wrong, all kinds of things. Let's talk about teaching. I know you do workshops. And I know for me, I feel one of the missions of a physical theater artist, and of mine particularly, is to teach. I feel that we're kind of like, what's the word? I can't think of the word now, but we, spread the concept, spread the, I think Marceau said, there's a quote that I saw from him once, that for the lack of schools and creators, and art dies. There's a quote attributed to Marceau of that nature. So I've always felt my teaching and my performing went hand in hand, I enjoy the teaching, and I'm sure that you've seen amazing performances in a studio that the public will never see, from that great innocent place that students can get into, and the moments that happen. Can you talk to us a little bit about your teaching philosophy, or why you do it, and maybe its importance or not? What do you think?
I think it's important. I enjoy teaching, though it depends on the students, of course. If I have
Yeah, you're
rotten
only as
students,
good as your students, they say,
I do
as a
not
teacher.
enjoy it. But if I've got
Yeah.
students, or students at least, they don't have to be greatly talented, but they have to be enthusiastic,
Mm.
and they have to try. If I see anybody not trying, I'm not going to like them.
Mm-hmm.
And my philosophy is not to say too much.
Yeah,
Not to
let them do the work. Yeah.
not to over explain when I do demonstrate, but usually in silence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't explain. You put your hand on your fingers and like this. No, they have to follow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if
And do you
if making a mistake, I just stare at them, and they go, oh, and they,
is it an enjoyable experience for you? Do you feel that there's a place for this
Yeah,
effort that you're doing?
yes, it is enjoyable. It's quite tiring. I find teaching. I mean, I love teaching, but I find it sometimes even more tiring than doing a show.
Well, I agree. I think a good class is like a performance, in terms of the timing, and how you have to be aware of the circumstances, and you have to communicate. You have to keep your energy. It's a total performance.
Yeah,
I always
indeed.
felt that my teaching informed my performance, because I had to think out what my philosophy was, and vice versa. The performance helped me have stamina and awareness in the classroom. So I think for me, they go hand in hand. And like you were saying, how much of an influence Marceau had on you, and of course, I had mentors in my lifetime, and so that passing down the knowledge is really important, because that's how the next generations are born, I would assume. So
And it's a mime is very fragile. There's not a lot of people who teach it,
exactly.
and it's you can put people off by doing it badly. Just like
Yeah,
not you. It's not the same. If you're a bad mime, people won't want to see mime again. It's very
absolutely. Yeah, they don't give it a chance. That's what it is, they
yeah.
shut off immediately. Yeah.
They say, "Oh, I didn't like that mime. I'm not going to. I'm not going to go." They don't say that about acting, dancing, singing. Even no, they don't say that. Oh, that was a horrible actor. I'm never going to see acting again. No, but with
Yeah, yeah,
mime,
yeah.
and to a certain extent, clowning as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, it comes down to the material again, doesn't it? I mean, that those ideas are so important in the end. It's too bad that mime has become kind of, over the decades, has become kind of stereotypical, and not the adventurous imagination places.
you've got to draw them in very quickly right at the beginning, which Marceau was the master of doing. He started with a very simple sketch, but a very funny one, generally the sculptor,
Mm-hmm.
where he had a great big block of. I could see it. It's of course there's not there a big block of marble,
Yeah, yeah.
and he's doing the thinker, and then he has an idea, and eventually
Yeah,
he
yeah,
gets.
yeah.
He picks up his chisel and hammer, and he with his feet he makes.
Yeah, there's that lyrical. I was thinking in terms of your performance, how your ballet and your love of music and time has really influenced your work. But that thing you're talking about with Marceau is a good example of that time and space
Yeah,
element.
the funny thing about Marceau, he chips this great block of marble down to this size.
Yeah, yeah.
He goes ping, and then back to the thinker again, and then that's the end of the sketch. No, that's
Yeah,
a beautiful sketch. it's easy to see. And as he goes on through the show, he gives his audience things that are much more complex. So he starts very simple and he works his way up to more complexity. So
Right.
he's educating his audience right from the beginning. And this is something you've got to think about. When you
What
come
yeah, go ahead. What?
when you come on, you don't generally you don't come in bells and whistles and yeah, there I am. You come on much slower than that and much quieter, because if you come on all bells and whistles and big and there's nowhere to go. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. What there's a quote. I saw a quote. I was doing some research on you yesterday, and there's a quote that you said that there was a famous director said to you once that mime would be the death knell of theater. And you said something like, well, it's unfortunate that people who should know better, that should know. And what I'm just wondering how that has influenced you over the years. This, this kind, we're talking about mime and the stereotypical qualities it can get into. Like, how do you combat that point of view? Because that's a common point of view by quite a few people that should know better. But
a lot of critics in the early days, a lot of critics wouldn't come to mime, even though there's a festival there. They wouldn't come because they said, "Oh, that's circus. We don't do circus." Or
it's the low art, the base art.
To get it publicised, it was generally by word of mouth only in those days, and we were sold out. We were sold out from the first festival because people said, "God." And then, of course, there was one critic from the Daily Telegraph who happened to be a Canadian, happened to be a writer on ballet, and who came and saw it and gave us great reviews in the big paper. And then they start coming. But there's still some of them that have no understanding of mime whatsoever.
Yeah. It's, the form, for me, the form is so eclectic, meaning that you have to be able to do so many things well, move, and your sense of command of the space and your ideas and your precision and your economy. And, the good mimes, the ideas come forward, and all that technical stuff, serves the idea. And it's, there's so much training that's gone into it that the ease of the technique, is disguises the fact that it's hard work. And also I'm feeling a little bit of the criticism comes from people that are just intimidated by what, goes into becoming a mime,
it's not for everybody. I mean, a mime and a clown, I must say, has to be born, I think.
I think you're right. And then the teacher or the influencers just reveal the inner jewels, just how do you open the door, in other words. Yeah.
But I think that mime itself, though, is really, to learn it anyway, whether you're going to be Marcel or a mime, is really good as part of one of the arrows in your quiver.
Absolutely.
Because it so helps you as a performer, no matter what kind of performer you are.
Yeah. I have a long history of working in high-level drama schools, and I was usually the performance and movement teacher. And I find that most acting students appreciate their voice teacher and their movement teacher above the acting teachers. And of course, the movement class has elements of the pure mind, but it's also just the sense of that world. And it's so valuable as a base for acting in general. It's the clown. I always feel the clown is the consummate actor. And the mime just takes some specialties a little further.
Well, a clown uses mime as well. I mean, a clown.
Oh yeah, a clown is a mime, and vice versa. I think.
They're sisters, or
sisters. Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. Now I was. Whoa! Oh no! It's getting hot in here. Oh no! Yeah. I don't know what that sound is, but it's time for rapid fire. It's rapid fire time, Nola. This is another little interlude that we're going to play with you. So you're oh, that's good. It's a good introduction. So this is the way this works. This is called rapid fire, which means I'm going to give you a phrase or a word, and I want you, if you would enjoy this, to give me an answer back. Like it's a word association, right? So if I said, for example, tree, you might say roots, for example, all right? You can respond verbally, or you can respond physically only with no words, or you can do both at the same time, okay? So I'll just give you a fun list here, and we'll take this adventure together a little bit, all right? Are you game for this? She has no choice. Okay. So rapid fire. I'll just give you a list here and you respond as quickly as you can in the moment, either physically or verbally or both. Okay, ready? Spotlight.
Spotlight.
Spotlight. Beautiful. Hands. Hands. Beautiful. Eyes. Eyes. Nice. Fourth wall. Sweat. Great. Child. Child. Elder.
What? Elder.
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 Elder. Old person. An elder.
Elder. You just say old person.
Great. Props.
Props. Props.
Props. Great. How about age? Age. Great. I saw a little Marceau in that one.
That was Marceau.
Failure. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Failure. Critic. Teacher. Angry mythology.
Angry pathology.
Angry mythology.
Oh, I thought you pathology.
Angry mythology. Fame. Language. Good. Very good. Great. Okay. Hey, speaking of age, let's talk just a little bit about the aging mime. Okay. So I'm 74, as I told you, and I've had to adjust, if especially if I want to keep performing. As you went through the years, what kind of adjustments do you have made, or how does one approach, aging as an artist, any kind of artist? Because I think you agree that there's some wonderful artists that even more wonderful than ever that when they're older in years. How do we approach that? How do we adapt to that as we go through our careers as artists?
It took me quite a while as I got older. I learnt to actually move with less stress, because the more stress you move with, the more exhausting everything is. So for a while, I learnt to move accurately, but with less stress. So I think in that way, I was a better artist. Then we went past all that, whereby
Yeah.
movement at all became much more difficult. I broke my kneecap in 93. Break your knee in 93, which stopped me from running and jumping, and so I had to adjust. You have to adjust. As you get old, you adjust, until eventually all this adjustment is just like too much hard work.
Right.
So you go, that's it. I cannot do this show, for instance, as well as I want to do it.
So you
And
feel
that's
there's an eventual time limit to the life of the mime or the clown, the physical artist? Is there how would one push through that if they wanted to continue, do you think? The lack of physical skills.
well, of course, any what's the word? Really hard physical work, like a dancer. There's a time when you can't do it anymore. Physically, you can't do it, and the same goes for mime, and the same would go for clowning too. You can't physically do it. Your body does not let you. So therefore, that's when that time comes.
Yeah.
It
So
comes.
you feel that one should just go to another chapter and not try to adapt further in terms of mental approach. Like I always felt aging for a physical theorist was like an hourglass. And so in the beginning of life, the physical side is up here and the mental side is down here. The physical side, well, let's say, put the other way, the physical side is full, right? The mental side is empty in the beginning. As we get older, we turn it over and the physical starts to drain into the mental, but the volume remains the same. So for example, whatever leaves here ends up here, but in a different form. Eventually, like you say, you throw it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
But that's one of the ways I've approached it through that journey that we're taking. That I appreciate that element of timelessness. The one thing we've spoken a lot about Marceau, one thing I've always appreciated about him was actually in the blackouts of his performances, because you could still see his luminous white costume just faintly in the darkness, right? And when he would be doing his thing, and then the blackout would come, and you'd see this almost like a ghost drifting very slowly off stage, conserving that energy like you talked about.
Yes.
And Pierre Very or somebody would hold the title card.
That's
and then
right.
you'd see the ghost slowly walking, conserving that energy back in the ritual to the stage. And then it would start again. I found that very fascinating, and that a way of capturing the energy and putting it in another place.
He had no stress in the way he worked. Marcel, he never did have. I had plenty of stress. Every movement was until I learned differently. I could do movement without all the stress, but he had it right from the beginning, and he had a very long performance life.
I saw. I spent some time with him. I think about 6 months before he died, and he was still had that sparkle in his eye.
Yeah.
So you feel the fire's gone out for you in a sense? Do you? What keeps some of the embers burning?
Not gone out. A good idea will set me going again.
Yeah.
The thing that's gone out is this constant touring on the road.
Yeah.
That's.
But your mind is still very vividly alive, right? I mean, you like directing, I'm assuming, and teaching your workshops. Yeah.
Let's say I might never perform again. It just depends what.
Yeah. What about legacy? What are your feelings on the legacy of the artist?
The legacy.
Was that important to you? Like that people remember you, after, years from now? It's like, how do you approach that? If like I've made my stand, like, how do you feel about that? It's okay if we forget about it, or is it in a dusty book on the shelf, or what do you think?
I have no idea. I've been trying to actually, I would like to leave stuff, pictures and posters with the Victorian Albert Museum, which has a theatre section in London. I think that might be a good resting place for a lot of stuff from me. Whether it's ever gets seen, I don't know, but that would be nice, rather than chuck it out into a bin.
Yeah. So you are interested in that people are influenced by you and have taken your treasures and can adapt them to their own worlds, right? Just like Marceau would have done.
Yes, I think people, I can't think that people, like they've done with Marceau, they don't, that I know of, they don't imitate me.
That's
That I
good.
know of. I don't know if they do or not, that I know of.
Yeah, yeah,
But there's a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
Marceaus out there who are on street corners with the white gloves and the white makeup doing Marceau stuff. And I said to Marceau once, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of little Marceaus out there. And he said, well, maybe, but what can I do about it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He was quite
What
gentle.
what advice would you give to young people today that are interested in mime and clown and or the mixture of that?
A clown is you, a mime is you. It's you. It's your
Say that
personality.
again. Say that again.
A mime and a clown, a mime and a clown is your personality.
It's your
It's you.
personality.
It's you. It's you very much so. Though Marcel used to say, well, my character Beep is very naive.
Mm-hmm.
I am not naive, but I think in a way he was. He had naivety about him, which was nice, which was one of the characteristics you loved him for. But it's really you, and it's up to you to make yourself an interesting person. If you're interesting as a person, you have much more chance of being interesting as a performer.
Mm.
If
So
you're
does
not
that mean that one should follow their dreams and natures, or just know themselves, sit under a tree on the coast and meditate, or both?
I don't know about meditating, but I think I think you've got to go out there and take things, enjoy, not just enjoy life, but have some life and try things out,
Yeah, let's have a
experiment,
drink.
and
Yeah,
don't say no to things. Experiment. If they don't work, they don't work. You've learned
yeah.
something. So experimentation is something a young person it would be good to do.
And what do you have any advice for what formal challenge a young person might take, like a particular school, or a particular workshop, or a particular place to live for a certain amount of time? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Uh, I would say for a young person, go and learn mime if you could find someone to teach it to you, but learn other things too. It all fits in, acrobatics. It's all going to help you. Even speaking, singing,
Yeah, yeah,
learn these things, and they will feed into your work.
yeah. I've
That,
always felt that language or voice is a gesture and movement is a voice. I've always looked at, they're both muscular, and they both use breath. I've always felt there was an interchange there. um
the problem is that words are confusing. They have double meanings, but
yeah,
movement isn't. It can be
yeah, 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 yeah.
confusing, yes, if you don't do it properly. But words don't necessarily tell you the truth. Words are slippery things, whereas movement,
Slippery, yeah.
you
There are
can't.
barriers. There are barriers to words too, like languages and
Yeah, language is
certain.
a barrier. It's definitely a barrier. But I like that.
Yeah,
Sorry, I said that I do like words. I love Shakespeare. I don't like me saying them, but I do. It's not that I'm against words,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you can be more truthful as a clown or a mime that doesn't speak. It, because you don't have this extra barrier to get over. You can make sounds if you like as a clown. People are going to understand you basically without that particular barrier. And what you do would go straight to the heart if you don't speak and you don't have the audience go, what did she mean there? It's if you're good at what you do, it goes to the audience's heart.
yeah, yeah. How would you how do you define, we haven't talked about this yet, how do you define what you've done? Like, I mean, I don't want to say how do you define mine, because every approach is different, but how would you define your art in an economical way? What is it?
Well, I've got a really nice story, which it was in India. I was playing in, I think it was Delhi, and there was overheard was a little boy who'd been to the show, and his friend asking about it, and the friend said, "What's he like, this Nola Ray?" And the child had seen. She said, "Well, for first thing, it's a girl. And what does she do then?" Well, sometimes she's a clown, and sometimes she's a Nola Ray.
Sometimes she's a Nola Ray. Wow. So in one sense, it's indescribable in terms of a conventional academic definition. It's your spirit
Yes,
culminating in a physical world. Yeah.
I mean, like any actor, I suppose it's he's Laurence Olivier and he acts like Laurence Olivier. It's it's
So you don't
anything.
differentiate. So in other words, the which has been problematic for mime and clown. People. In our world. I was going to say this earlier. Our world today packages things like the layperson needs to have kind of a cereal box in front of them to see what it is, and even though we know that mime and clown are so eclectic with all the influences and the things that go into
I
that.
think it's hard to actually give them a good definition because they're in their heads. They think that a clown is McDonald's clown and works in the circus and gives out lollipops to kids, and it isn't. And as I say, it can be, but it's not. It's a big, broad church. All these arts. So what you've got to do is get the audience to think beyond the box. That's
Yeah, I
what
was going to say that. See, we were talking about how language has barriers. Well, there you go. The word mime, the word clown presents a barrier.
yeah.
And you said that, well, I'm Nola Ray. So that's more ethereal and more esoteric than the word mime or clown, which is that
Yeah.
proves the point that,
Yeah.
there's no limit to the universal. Well, we're talking very esoterically, or there's no limit to that universal truth of being in the mime form, whatever that
Yeah.
is.
But the same goes for lots of artists, and they do their
Yeah.
things who they are, and you go to see them doing their things because they are who they are, even though they remain who they are in their roles a lot of the time. Actors.
So if you're at a party and someone asks you, well, Nola, what do you do for a living? What would you say to them?
I say I'm a mime, and they go, "What?"
And then how would you describe that?
Oh, I say, and they say, "Oh, you mean you work on the streets and you do those statue things?"
Yeah. The statue thing.
No, I work in the theatre.
Yeah, mime is that's one of my missions today, is to make sure young people know that mime is a theater art, and it belongs in the theater, not just in the street. I mean, it's so tragic that that's kind of gone by the wayside in the recent
I
decades.
mean, Marceau started very small. You can tell the students that he started in cafe theatres in Paris, little cafe theatres. He said
Yeah.
it took him 10 years to get the audience quiet. And because not that they didn't like what he was doing, and it must have been much shrunken because of the space he was in, it's because they had never heard silence before, anybody working with silence. So they used to whistle. And not
Wow.
He said it took 10 years, he's told me this, 10 years to get them quiet. And after a while, he burst out of the cafe theatre because mime, his type of mime anyway, played in vast theatres. He played in thousands, big theatres. But he started very small in the cafe theatre. I'm not sure he ever started on the street, though apparently during the war, he was on the street. He was helping, he was in the resistance. And he was leading Jewish children into Switzerland. So I dare say he did quite a bit of mime on the street at that time.
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? Is to get young people to understand that you don't need to be in a big theater or a big, opera house to start your career. It can start in the most humble beginnings, and that's, I think a lot of younger people are very discouraged and get depressed. Well, I haven't made it, right? But there's this chrysalis of genius that you can find anywhere, like a music, like a mime is like a great musician. You can make music anywhere.
Well,
and as long as the quality's there.
I started on the street myself. I started on the street.
Yeah.
Sketches on the street.
I was lucky. I was always on the stage in one form or another. I was very lucky. Thank you. This has been a great conversation. There's so much more that we could talk about. What
As I say, I'm quite ancient. I have a lot of stories, a lot of little stories.
was there ever a time that you wanted to walk away from what you did? Was there a time when you got discouraged?
No,
Like the time when you shifted to more complete solo dramas? Was that a period where you felt you had to shift away from something, or you were just curious about something?
no, I was thinking this might be a better way of taking your art on.
Taking Nola Ray on, right? No, that makes sense. I have the same kind of arc in my work.
Mm.
Last question: what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh dear. I can only say that, no, I don't know what I want to be. I think I'm always going to be a mime and a clown. And don't forget, I think you know this, that clowns in particular, and mimes, are really serious people.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
So I
They
want to be
feel
a
many
a
things.
comedian when I grow up. Not the
Yeah,
comedian.
yeah.
Anybody who does this kind of comedy is a serious business, and clowning is very serious.
Yeah.
I don't
Thank
think
you, Nola. This has been great. Oh, you had another thought. You had one more thought. Tell us your thought.
it's gone now. This is what old age. I had a thought, now it's gone somewhere.
Yeah, I had some of those too in the last few minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been great. Mime Radio Show, everybody, and we'll see you next time.